Rocky Top Insider presents the RTI Rim Runner with Bob Baskerville and Ryan Shumpert.
Welcome. Another edition of the RTI Rim Runner coming your way right now. I'm Bob Baskerville, joined as always by one of RTI's finest, Ryan Shumpert. Ryan, it's a new year. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Glad to be back on here, and plenty of good stuff for us to talk about.
Definitely so. Pretty excited to do it. We appreciate you all checking us out, whether it's on video via the Rocky Top Insider channel on YouTube. If you're checking us out that way, make sure you like and subscribe. If you're checking us out as a podcast, it's all good. We're pretty much available wherever you listen to your podcast. So just make sure you make us part of your routine there and download us if you haven't already. We've got a great show today. It is on now, as football winds down. We're down to the Final Four in college football. College basketball is throttling up. Conference play is on all around the country. We'll review a great opening week, including some very, very big games in the SEC. Let's get to it, man. Let's talk about the opening tip. Tennessee basketball. We'll start at home first. When we last met, Ryan, we were ushering out 2025, going into 2026, and we knew what lied ahead for Tennessee in terms of conference play was going to be some pretty tough games. And it started out with a conference opener in Fayetteville against Arkansas, who I believe at the time was ranked 18th in the country. Tennessee was 19th. That was a tough opener, man. We're not going to go into too much detail because it's been about 5 days since that game, but it's tough to play on the road, certainly in Fayetteville. That was a tough one, but feels like we got back on track against Texas, and now we start to look ahead to a very, very big game against Florida in Gainesville this coming weekend. But Ryan, let's start a little bit with Arkansas. Maybe talk about what cost the boys that game in your mind, besides just the fact that Darius Acuff is absolutely electric.
Yeah, certainly Acuff was a big part of it, and I think I wrote about after the game and the quick takeaways. It's just Arkansas's stars played better than Tennessee's, and you go on the road. The common saying and whatnot, you expect your stars to play well no matter what. The big difference going on the road is your role players obviously oftentimes are not as good. And that really wasn't the case. Tennessee's role players, not that every single one of them played great, but as a collective, Tennessee got good production there. And, Jacoby Gillespie was fine. He didn't play bad, but Nate Ament really struggled. So, that was a big part of it. I think you'd point to turnovers being, the game gets away from Tennessee with an 11-0 run there midway through the second half, and that's when Jacoby Gillespie, Tennessee tries to give him a quick blow. Ethan Berg comes in, Tennessee with Berg in the game, turns it over on 3 or 4 possessions. That was a big issue. Free throw shooting was a big issue. It's all stuff that we've talked about on here, all stuff that has plagued Tennessee at times this season. And I think that's, in some ways frustrating, in some ways understandable. So that the issues continue to be similar. I also thought, the first 7-8 minutes of the second half, Tennessee severely outplayed Arkansas. It felt like they should have been up by 7 or 8, and they never stretched it out more than 3 or 4 because they missed some easy shots, they missed free throws. It's the type of things that even though in that moment, 7 minutes into the second half, Tennessee was up 4 points. I didn't feel good because you knew Arkansas was going to go on a run. Arkansas was going to start playing a little bit better, and it didn't feel like Tennessee had built up the type of lead or the cushion that they needed to be able to withstand that.
Yeah, a couple things that were moments for me in that game. I mean, there were a lot of them. You mentioned Ethan Berg, the kind of youth league play where he got kind of trapped at one point, and then he had picked up his dribble and then he dribbled again. Was just you could just start your watch on how quickly he was going to get pulled by Coach Barnes at that point. That was one. And then, we don't need to litigate the Nate Ament situation too much because I know that's been a hot topic, and still believe and holding out hope that he's going to come around as time goes on. But the moment that he had trouble being decisive, getting an inbounds pass in, they make the 5-second call. What I believe it was a 5-point game at that point. So Arkansas gets the ball. They work the shot clock down, or maybe they didn't work it. Tennessee's defense made them work it. And I think it was it Malik Thomas that hits a 3?
I think it was Kevin Knox.
Carter Knox.
Carter Knox.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. I was so used to Acuff and Thomas just lighting us up from everywhere. But it was Carter Knox. That made it an 8-point game. And for me, that was kind of the moment. It was like, okay, man, this is not going to work out today. It just felt like just too many like little series of events that accumulated over time. And again, we know it's tough to play at Bud Walton. We get it. And Arkansas is a good team. We get that too. But it was kind of disappointing to see what had happened there as we wind down and take the loss.
Yeah, and the Carter Knox shot, kind of off, as you said, in the shot clock, awkward, leaning to the side. And then, I think I can't remember what Tennessee did on their next offensive possession, but didn't get a great shot. And then Acuff hit another contested 3, I think, over in Gillespie in the next possession to officially put it away. But no, you're right. It felt like there were a lot of moments in the second half where Tennessee, just things got away from Tennessee, or critical moments. I would go to, in the middle of that 11-0 run, I think Arkansas was up 3 when Nate got fouled and went to shoot the 1-and-1, and it's like, Tennessee's not playing great right now, but you go up there, you make 2 free throws, you settle yourself. It's a 1-point game with 8 minutes to play, 7 minutes to play, or whatever, and Nate misses the front end, and I think that's what, one of the things I would just point to the game as a whole, like, Tennessee's going to have some free throw shooting issues just because of the lineups they play. Certainly Jalen Carey, I think, is 3rd on the team in free throws attempted, and he's a career poor free throw shooter. So you don't expect him to shoot it great. But, I think that's just, when you look at the 2 issues for Tennessee in that game, and 2 of Tennessee's issues right now of free throw shooting and Nate Ament not playing as well as Tennessee needs him to. Like, those are just 2 things that to me, feel easily fixable. He goes 5 of 11 in that game. Nate should be a good free throw shooter. He goes, 9 of 11, which isn't great, but shoots 9 of 11. He scores 17 points. Tennessee shoots, I think, like 71% at the line. From what the final score ended up being, that's not the difference, but I do think it changes the dynamic of the game. And heck, as we're just, as just mentioning, if he hits the front end of a free throw there, he gets another attempt. So we know the margins are small, and it feels like for 2 of Tennessee's bigger issues, or at least the talking points around this team right now, like that stuff is easily fixable. Some of the Nate issues to me are not easily fixable. Not that I would just completely cast out the chances of him turning it around, but I have a hard time seeing some of it. That's one that I think he can turn around and should get turned around, and certainly would have made a big impact in how the game was played on Saturday, and even if Tennessee lost, would have had a big impact on how we're talking about it.
Yeah, I totally agree. So then what I feel that outcome did was escalate expectations and concerns, maybe it'd be the better word, of what was upcoming with the game at home in Knoxville on Tuesday night against Texas. Not a great Texas team. Vols came in, I believe, a 10.5-point favorite. It started to feel like kind of a must-win game, just because we know the path forward in the conference is going to be super tough. Happily, and we've seen this pattern before with Tennessee and Rick Barnes teams. You can say that they do a good job of picking themselves up, particularly when they're at home coming off of a loss. And that's exactly what they did against Texas in a game that was never really close. Could have even been probably a bigger blowout than it was. But nonetheless, it was, I think, a pretty decisive win over Texas.
Yeah, it was. And you're right. I mean, it feels, maybe silly to call a game must win in early January, but it kind of felt that way for Tennessee. To me, it just feels like this month in January, Tennessee's got to win all their home games. Not that they're all maybe must wins, but they're games Tennessee needs to take care of, and Texas, I think, is the worst of the bunch. It's going to be the easiest game Tennessee has this month. So, yeah, they needed to. I think they came out crisp early. They took a lead from the jump, and really it probably took later in the first half when Tennessee truly took control, pushed things out to double digits, and once they got it to double digits, and it never got back to single digits, got it up to as much as 23. Texas did make some runs. Tennessee had some bad stretches of basketball in the second half, but it felt like anytime Texas was close to maybe making things interesting, Tennessee had an answer, and certainly Jacoby Gillespie had a lot of those answers in the second half, and I think was the best game we've seen him play in a Tennessee uniform.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was a fantastic performance by Jacoby. One of the things that I thought was key too, we talked with a person on the radio about who covers the Texas Longhorns, and he was talking to us before that game saying, obviously their big Modest Vocatitis was coming in on a heater. He was averaging about 19-7 his last 3 games, I believe. But he said before the game, he goes, the biggest problem with Vocatitis is keeping him on the floor because of foul trouble. And it felt like he got totally neutralized in this game. Tennessee played bully ball, got him in foul trouble. The combination of that, and then Dalen Swain, who is their leading scorer and had an amazing game against Mississippi State the weekend prior to our game against Texas, he was kind of neutralized too. And I think that was just because he was out of the flow. I think you covered it too. The post-game presser with Sean Miller. He made too many mistakes. He had 7 turnovers in that game. And so when you lose those 2 guys, that pretty much, that put Tennessee in a great position to take this game. Yeah,
no doubt. I think, if you would have told me or, most anyone that those guys would combine for 9 points before a game, I'd have predicted that Tennessee would win by even more than they did.
Right.
And there's just not a ton of firepower on this Texas team. So it feels like that's going to lead to them struggling a lot on the road, especially this year. And certainly when those 2 guys don't play well, it's a narrow path for this Texas team to win games in SEC play.
Yeah, exactly. We talked about Jacoby Gillespie. He was fantastic. Kind of showed the promise of what our expectation would be of Jacoby. Not that we're going to get that kind of a performance every single game, but he can definitely change the narrative of a game pretty quickly when he's on like he was. And I'm going to rewind. I'm sure we talk about the freshmen first of all. And I'm going to rewind for a second back to that Arkansas game because one thing we didn't mention was how great Amari Evans played in that Arkansas game with 16 points, 7 of 7 shooting. He didn't score 16 points against Texas, but 23 minutes, 4 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 steals, a block, just kind of a total stat stuffer line with the exception of points scored. But he was in there, including that tip in right before halftime. I mean, we're seeing a guy that is truly helping impact the game for Tennessee.
No doubt. And I think even you go back to the Louisville game when he fouls out in 7 minutes, feels like he's doing a better job of playing without fouling. Like I think that's a no-brainer, like a no-doubter that he's doing more than that. But I think, and Rick Barnes talked about it, I guess it was Gardner Webb, Tennessee played after that, of him finding the balance of playing aggressive and playing without fouling. And, him, Evans, I don't know, struggling with that or just trying to find that. And it feels like he's doing better with that. He's got 3 steals in each of these last 2 games. And just giving Tennessee, I think it raises the defensive ceiling a lot for him to be playing this much because he's just a high-level athlete. And I think it, when he was not playing and he did not have a big role, it felt like teams that had 2 good scoring guards, Tennessee was just going to struggle against. And not that they might not now. It's not like Amari Evans and Bishop Boswell or Jemai Meshack and Zakai Ziegler, but Tennessee's better equipped to handle some of those teams. And Evans is a big part of that. He continues to do a lot of the little things well. I think, certainly the 16 points that he scored at Arkansas, you're not going to see that a lot. But to me, he just plays comfortable on offense, like a good balance of not forcing the issue too much while also being a threat when he's out there, especially in transition. He's been pretty good at getting to the basket and scoring. So it's, to me, it's one of the bigger stories for Tennessee right now. The way he's emerged, I wrote about it before SEC play started that it felt like he was emerging, and it's gone to I think his season high was 13 minutes a game before SEC play, and now he's played 23 minutes in each of Tennessee's first two SEC games, and it feels like he's passed, to me, Amari Abram and Ethan Berg as that first guard off the bench.
Yeah. And then one more thing, the bigs, and one of them includes another freshman in Dwayne Brown, but the trio of Brown, Carey, and Estrella, looking here, they combined for 31 points, 14 rebounds. Again, Tennessee had their way in the paint against Texas, and these guys obviously led the way.
Yeah, no doubt. That was, the points in the paint number was about as jarring as you'll see in an SEC game. And Dwayne Brown from the jump, he scored the first basket of the game. He was really solid. He continues to be really efficient. And then I think Carey and Estrella, you saw them do a lot of what they have done this season. Carey being physical force on the block, Estrella getting tip-ins, cleaning some stuff up, able to score in a couple different ways. So that's kind of the formula. I feel like, especially if Nate Amint's only going to score 8 points like he did in this game, and look, it was he only took 4 shots, so he was efficient with his 8 points. But if you're not going to get, and even if you are going to get stuff from him, you're not going to get 34 from Jacoby every night. Getting, I think 35, and Akbar scored 4. Yeah, Akbar scored 4. 35 points from that front court. Like that's kind of the formula for this Tennessee offense to be good. It's not going to be anybody scoring 25, I don't think, on any given night, but all those guys are capable of scoring, and certainly Estrella and Carey can get up in the upper teens on any given night.
The one thing I'll add about Nate, and maybe you talk me down if I'm just trying to convince myself that it wasn't quite as bad as it seems, but I rewatched the game yesterday morning, and I looked at Nate's line later. Like you said, only 8 points. He only had 4 field goal attempts, made 2 of them, but had 5 rebounds, had 4 steals, 2 blocks. Now he did have 5 turnovers, but I still felt when I was watching it that I could see him. I thought I could see him impacting the game with his length in other ways. But you tell me, you think I'm just trying to convince myself that it's not as bad as it seems?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think he did some good things in the game. I think it would be, he had 4 steals. I think it'd be a lot easier to paint that picture, see that vision if he hadn't turned the ball over 5 times.
Right.
It's, if you're going to score 8 points but only take 4 shots and do other things well, it's like, yeah, you're making a big impact on the game. You're probably saying, this is a guy Tennessee's paying a lot of money for. He needs to be taking more than 4 shots and scoring at a higher clip. But he played overall. That was a good game. Anybody that wasn't in Nate's shoes, we would be talking about what a big impact they made. But to me, the turnovers were kind of tough to get over there. And 2 of them, I think, on the first 3 or 4 possessions, maybe 3 before the first media timeout. So he settled into the game. It wasn't as bad as it went on, but ugly for him there at the start, and that's the big thing that that was the stat or the area that was most discouraging from his performance.
Yeah, agreed. So we've covered what the difference was in that Texas game, right? Dominated the glass. Jacoby Gillespie, of course, shot better at the line, and there was a pretty high volume of free throw attempts because the refs decided to make themselves kind of center stage in this game. But Tennessee shot 72% from the line, which it's sad to say we're giddy about that based on what we've seen in previous games lately at the free throw line for Tennessee. So hopefully that's a trend that's going to continue to head in a better direction. Like you said, Ryan, Jalen Carey, we're just going to have to accept that. That guy is a liability at the line, but these other guys should not be.
No, and you look at the numbers, nobody else really shot them that poorly in the game. And, wasn't that bad of a game from Jalen Carey. I think
Yeah.
most nights Jalen Carey goes 4 or 7 at the line. You're probably, I mean, you're not going to be jumping for joy with it, but you're kind
Right.
of begrudgingly like, all right, I'll take that. He's shot over 50%, which is kind of where he is as a career free throw shooter. So, no, you're right. It was better. And yeah, that was one when I guess on Monday I was starting to look into the matchup more. Texas shoots a lot of free throws, and their opponents shoot a lot of free throws. So I felt like we were in for maybe a game that wasn't going to be the most visually pleasing, and all the more upsetting when the game tipped off at 9:10 local time.
Oh, God. Yeah, don't even get me started. Not to mention, I got jammed in G10 trying to get out afterwards, too. It was brutal. All right, so we're into 2026. Where Tennessee stands in terms of ranking status, they moved down a spot in the AP poll, and I think they also moved down in the USA Today coaches poll. They're 21st in AP, 22nd USA Today, but that's prior to this Texas win. Although, did I read this correctly? Is Texas's win, at least currently, is a quad 2 win?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I haven't. I just saw it in the notes that you put together. I hadn't looked it up independently, but I would think so. I mean, Texas is not great, so that is a
Yeah.
home game. I do think would probably end up a quad 2.
Yeah. So with that said, Tennessee actually moved up in the net a little bit. They're up to 24th, but again, 2-3 record in quad 1 games. The Texas win doesn't help them in the quad 1 status at all. They kind of treaded water in Ken Palm. They're still 16th overall, 37th in offensive efficiency, 13th in defensive efficiency, and then 14th. They might have moved up a slot or two in Bart Torvik up to 14. So my question is, Ryan, for you. So we look ahead to the Florida game, and as I've heard from a few people, and I mean, I felt a little of that, particularly after the Arkansas game, that maybe Tennessee's underachieving. Some of the more vocal fans have been like, this season is a bust. I don't buy that. But also, I would say let's draw some comparisons in terms of Florida. And why I say that is we play them next, of course, but Florida is 10-5 now. They're out of the rankings. They lost to Missouri last weekend in Como, 76-74. They bounced back with an emphatic win over number 18 Georgia in Gainesville on Tuesday night. They have that lethal front court, but they continue to struggle on the perimeter. Currently ranked 361st in three-point field goal percentage out of 365 teams in D1.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about it from the jump of the season with those two in the backcourt, with Lee from Princeton and Flan from Arkansas, and Flan, I think, kind of is what he is as a shooter. Lee, it feels like, can shoot it a little bit better. I know Condon's been really bad as a shooter this season too. Not that he's some amazing shooter, but he shot it more efficiently last year. So some of it, to me, I'm waiting. Like I surely they're not that bad of a 3-point shooting team. Is kind of my thought. They're not. Michigan State was kind of that last year where they were like bottom 10 nationally in 3-point percentage. I keep on waiting for them to shoot it a little bit better, but at the same time, I don't think that this is a Florida team that's going to shoot it great. And to your point about like preseason expectations, and look, I guess I would preface this by saying Florida won the national championship last year, so you have that to fall back on. But if you're a Tennessee fan from looking at it from Tennessee's perspective, to me it would probably be most similar. Florida would be like how you would feel as a Tennessee fan if you had lost a Houston game, essentially. Where to me, Louisville's better than Georgia, but pretty comparable.
Yeah.
And this Florida team just really hasn't beaten. I mean, that was really their first true good win of the season. Now they've lost to a bunch of good teams. TCU is better than Syracuse. It's probably not as bad as a loss as
Right.
Losing to Syracuse on the road, losing to TCU in a neutral. But that is the type of game that if you're Florida, especially in hindsight, when you weren't able to get Duke, you weren't able to get Connecticut, you're like, man, you really should have won that one. So similarities where for these two from a losses standpoints, but still the metrics liking them, more than the AP poll does.
Yeah, I agree, and that's the thing. I was just going to say that basically, um, if you think about it from the standpoint of where we stack up, I just talked about where our rankings were in Ken Palm, Torvik, the net, etc. Georgia, Florida is frankly, they're ranked either slightly above or slightly below Tennessee in all of those metrics. So, as far as I'm concerned, that just underscores how important this game is going to be in Gainesville on Saturday. And not for nothing, you made a mention of this. Florida has 5 losses. They've lost to some really good teams. Those 5 losses have been by a total of 17 points. So we've been discussing this. I think last week when we were talking about who we were predicting to possibly win the SEC, I think you might have even had Florida winning it, which I think is very plausible because Florida has shown us they can range anywhere from beatable to very, very dangerous, and we're just not sure which version of the Florida Gators the Vols will see in Gainesville on Saturday afternoon. Certainly hoping it's not like the trip to Gainesville last season. Yeah. That was absolutely brutal. So my question to you, Ryan, is what do we feel are the keys, your keys, for Tennessee to come out of Gainesville victorious and 2-1 in conference play? Is that attainable for us?
Yeah, it is attainable. Yeah, I'm skeptical of it, and look, I think some of that is last year. I think still in my mind, and just a place Tennessee has not played very well over the last handful of years in Gainesville. So some of that probably creeps in, and just the fact that it's hard to win an SEC play, and I'm probably still higher on Florida than most. But the keys, to me, it starts and ends with rebounding. Like this is a game that, the old coach's catchphrase. I would not be surprised if Rick Barnes says this after the game or before the game at some point, that this is just one of those games that's going to start when the ball goes up. Florida's the best rebounding team in the country. Tennessee, I don't know where they are at the moment of recording, but top 5. They entering SEC play. When we were recording last week, Florida was the best rebounding team in the country, and Tennessee was the second best. So it is a game that is, I think, largely going to be decided there. And if you're Tennessee, you have to be able to hold your own to break even in this game to me to have much of a chance of winning. So, I would say that. I would say just Tennessee defensively, this feels like a game that Florida has been so pedestrian at times offensively because of some of those shooting issues that we've talked about. Tennessee needs to be attention to the scouting report, attention to details. I don't think this is a game that if it turns into, if you got to get into the 80s to win, I have a hard time seeing this being a game Tennessee is going to win. So, I almost point more to the defense off for Tennessee offensively. Again, I think this is not a spot I would predict an Adamant breakout performance. I don't love the matchup for him. So right. It does feel like it's going to be a lot of pressure on Jacoby Gillespie. And can you get stuff from your front court offensively against, what is obviously a really good Florida front line?
Yeah, it looks pretty daunting, to say the least. I mean, what I'm thinking would need to happen is if Tennessee can somehow neutralize that front line of Florida defensively and, force Florida to shoot from the perimeter, because again, they are just not shooting well at all. They're making our shooting on the perimeter look pretty solid, and that's saying a lot. So I think that's pretty important, and they just have to play clean. I think that's the other thing too. I mean, we just can't afford the early turnovers too, because it feels like sometimes we get going. To me, it feels like we do some of that early in the game, and then there's no revelation to say that in the second half we've seen it happen in games against Illinois, against Kansas, and others where we kind of lose the rope in that last half of the second half. That's my biggest concern, is if we can hold serve against Florida and we're at the 10-minute mark of the second half and we're looking pretty good. It's like, can we please finish it out? Because we haven't done that very often this year.
No, you're right, and that's been very common theme. Just to the way you outlined it, against Illinois, against Kansas, and against Arkansas last Saturday.
Arkansas,
So, even if it's Tennessee doesn't win the game, and I know this isn't what people are going to want to hear, but if Tennessee can get through that and make this a one-score game late, to me, that would be a sign of progress. Obviously, you want to
yeah.
win, and at the end of the day, if you don't, you're still going to be disappointed, and it is going to be a missed opportunity. But to me, that'd be a sign of growth, especially away from home, because in Tennessee's 2 true road games this year, they've certainly have played pretty poorly at Syracuse and at Arkansas.
Have you seen any advance on what the line is for this game?
KenPom has Florida by 4. Torvik, I think, has Florida by 3. So
yeah, I was gonna say I was gonna bet it's gonna be somewhere in the 2.5 to 3.5 range. So that feels about right, honestly. Well, we shall see. A noon start. Don't love that either, but let's get to it, I guess.
Yeah, it's from a work standpoint, I like it. We'll see how
Yeah.
Tennessee as a team handles it, getting up and getting going.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's widen the lens a little bit. The big thing for today is just looking around all the major conferences, SEC included, but all the others as well. Sure, it's early, right? It's only week 1 in conference play for the most part. I guess Big Ten's been playing a little bit longer, but I think we've already seen some interesting trends in all these conferences. Maybe spend a few moments talking about what is surprising us so far. We'll stay in the SEC. I don't want to say this surprises me, but it showed me something just last night. Number 11, Vanderbilt, proves their mettle on Wednesday night against number 13, Alabama in Nashville. The Commodores take down the Tide 96-90. And I thought they looked pretty damn strong against a top-tier team. So have they fully passed the who have they played test? I don't know about that, but, man, I do think that they're Nate Oates even said it post-game. It's like, I don't know. He goes, at this point, you got to say that the SEC championship may be running through Nashville. I don't know. That's a little early to say, but, man, they played. This was a pretty entertaining game to watch last night. It was a frenetic pace, and Vanderbilt, obviously, by winning the game, held their own.
Yeah, no doubt. Just from I don't know. I did not, the second half especially, did not find the game as visibly pleasing. 88 total free throw shot in this game. Vanderbilt shot 50 of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it turned into a little bit of a ref show. But no, I mean, look, I've been high on Vanderbilt before. I mean, everything that I've thought about them, you just add the caveat of they need to prove it against better teams. But none of it was that I didn't expect them to when they got the opportunity. And it's just a really, really good backcourt. Tyler Tanner, his emergence to the level, is something that I just did not see coming. I thought he'd be a guy that would have a nice year. Really liked him as a freshman that went under the radar. I mean, this is a kid that was, it was Vanderbilt and Belmont. That was his top 2. There was not a lot of high major interest for this kid, and Vanderbilt gets him. He showed those signs last year, and he's just he's playing at an All-American level right now. Looking at it right now, KenPom has him 7th in the National Player of the Year rankings. Vanderbilt got Duke Miles back in this game. He has been banged up, didn't really look like he missed a beat. Now, I guess he missed a beat with some foul trouble. He fouled out with about 6 minutes left. But looked like the guy we've seen a lot of this year, and it's a Vanderbilt team that's backcourt is really, really good, and Devin McLaughlin kind of feels like a guy that plays above his head a little bit. He felt that way last year to me, too. He's not a superstar by any means, but does what they need him to do, and gets the most out of his talent. So, I don't. When it comes to with Vanderbilt, I guess I don't see them in that top group nationally. I don't think they're in the group with an Iowa State or a Michigan, or to me even maybe quite a Houston or a Duke. Maybe they're in the back half of that group. But when it comes to the SEC, when it comes to that second group nationally, I think they're as good as anybody. And the what's next, what else is there to prove? I think it's to go on the road and win some games like this. And some of this is just the nature of SEC being great, but they're really not going to have a ton of opportunities to do that. I mean, they go to Arkansas here 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, they finish the regular season at Tennessee. other than that, their road games, I mean, they play at Rupp, they play at Missouri, they play at Auburn, but not a ton of super challenging SEC matchups. So it'll be interesting to see how they do going on the road. Obviously, it's kind of a mixed bag. I can't remember, is that UCF game, I think, was a true away game. They played well, not great there. They played terrible at Memphis and found a way to win in overtime, and then they played great at Wake. So
Yeah.
it's not like they haven't gone and played well on the road, but they'll need to do a little bit more. Or when you talk about continuing to raise the stakes and raise the expectations for Vanderbilt, those are the boxes they're looking to check. But I don't think there's any doubt that this is a legit Commodore team.
Yeah, it's interesting. I listened to some of Mark Byington's post-game press conference too, and he made the comment, because this absolutely had to be preseason, because you just have kind of underscored that the path for them doesn't look that terribly tough at the moment. But he said he was told at media days by the conference that the feeling was that they had the toughest schedule in the SEC. And it's like, well, things have changed because some teams are not delivering, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But all of a sudden, it is shaping up pretty well for them. Bama, this is what drives me nuts about Alabama, and I'm just hopeful we get this version of Alabama when Tennessee plays them. They had 43 point attempts last night. They've shot 9 of 40 from 3-point range, 22%. We've seen this so many times now with Nate Oates' teams. When it's fallen, they look like elite. But when it's not, it's like, what do you fall back on? What's your pivot plan? Because it doesn't seem like they have one. And they hung in this game. I don't want to make it sound like they got blown out, but it's the style sometimes. I guess Nate's he's a percentages guy for sure. He's like, the percentages of times it works far outweighs the times it doesn't. But man, when it doesn't, it is not pretty.
No, and look, I think I wouldn't go as far as saying I left this game more encouraged by Alabama, but I also just didn't leave it discouraged by them either.
Sure.
Phylon misses basically the whole first half, whole second half with an injury. Wright-Sell missed a lot of the second half with an injury, so they're banged up. I thought Amari Allen, he's a talented freshman. The way he stepped up and kind of took advantage of some of those opportunities was impressive. And look, Vanderbilt's not a team that's like great on the glass or anything, or a great rebounding team, but that's been my knock on Alabama, is how soft they've been inside at times this year. And they won the rebounding battle last night, so not a game that had me hitting the panic button on Alabama, but certainly to your point, they shot it poorly from the perimeter. It didn't feel like they were missing a ton of wide open looks either. I'm sure there were some, but Alabama, or Vanderbilt, did a good job of defending the 3-point line, and Alabama was not able to make them pay by hitting a lot of contested looks.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, Tyler Tanner, 29 points, 3 boards, 7 assists. Like you said, I don't need to elaborate too much more. I'm always struck by how I used the term earlier, how clean he plays. Now, he had some turnovers, but given the percentage of times he's got the ball in his hands, this guy's really special. And, it is not hyperbole to say he could end up, he could be like him and Darius Acuff and some others for SEC Player of the Year. I really believe that. This kid's pretty amazing. He looks like he's about 12 out there, but but he absolutely can play. Vanderbilt. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I'll just go off that point. And Aiden Sherrill was the other guy who didn't play for Alabama last night.
Oh, that's right.
Another key guy. I'm gonna give you a trivia question. You just hit on 2 of those. Ken Palm's all SEC team right now, and it's not by position or anything. It's just ranked their 5 highest rated players. Who do you think is that top 5? You named 2 of them a moment ago.
All right. Yeah. So okay, Acuff, Tanner.
Yeah, Tanner's 1. Acuff is 5.
Okay. Jacoby's not in there, is he?
Jacoby's number 3.
Nice. Okay, that's good. Thomas Howell, of course.
He's Florida. Not. I was shocked by that. But no, he's not in there.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, give me one more second. We're not going to turn.
One not surprising, one you should get. The other moderately surprising. Surprised he was in there over Hout.
Don't say Josh Hubbard, right?
No, not Josh Hubbard.
I mean, if it's shot attempts, he would be
Yeah,
number one. But
31 the other night.
oh God, yeah, no kidding. Good gosh, man, why am I struggling with this?
Another one in the game last night.
Oh, in the game last night,
Yeah.
Aiden Holloway.
No, Phylon too.
Oh, Phylon. Yeah, okay.
And then
yeah.
Keyshawn Hall at Auburn was 4. I was a little bit surprised that he was in there.
Yeah, that's interesting, but that's a fun little exercise. So Vanderbilt's one of only 6 remaining unbeaten teams in the country right now. It's kind of crazy. Arizona, Michigan, Iowa State, Nebraska, and Miami of Ohio are the others. Go Redhawks.
Go Redhawks, baby.
That's crazy. Okay, also noteworthy in the SEC, Kentucky and Auburn. You just mentioned Keyshawn Hall with Auburn. They are 0-2 in SEC play already, while Mississippi State, Texas A&M, and Missouri are all 2-0. I listened to a little bit of KSR's postgame last night, and as you can imagine, they are beside themselves right now. Kentucky's on their heels, man. I gotta say, this is, and I did not see this coming at the beginning of the season.
No, certainly not to this degree. I mean, even I was lower on them than most were, and didn't love the roster makeup. But I didn't see anything to this point, and like gave the game away would be dramatic. We'll probably get more to a giving the game away and what Providence did last night against UConn, but they were just so bad down the stretch last night. I mean, they, again, saying they had the game won would not be fair by any means, but they were up by 8 with 4.5 left, and 2 terrible turnovers in the last 2 minutes. Jalen Lowe took 2 3-pointers contested, including one of those again on the last possession, where it's just like, they took a timeout. I just didn't get how that was what the option was out of a timeout. So those are 2 teams that I'm starting to, I don't know if I'll say hit the panic button on their tournament chances, but I think are very much bubble teams at this point. It's Kentucky and Auburn. Torvik's tourneycast has Kentucky a 52% chance to make the tournament, Auburn 48. So it's worrisome. And you look at Auburn especially, they go play, I think go find that. I think it's at Arkansas is where they go on Saturday. So a couple really challenging games for them coming up. Yeah, they get Arkansas at home and then go to Missouri the next 2. So at the very least, I would guess would be 1-3 in SEC play. Could be 0-4, and then Kentucky. It doesn't feel like there's any magic elixir. I know everybody has been saying wait for them to get healthy. I do think they're a better team healthy, but there's just still a lot of flaws with this team, and I think it's going to be pretty maddening for Big Blue Nation all season.
Yeah, I mean, just watching Mark Pope's body language at this point, it's not pretty. And I've got a close friend who knows ball and is a big Kentucky fan, and has said the other book on Pope is that he takes this stuff so hard. He's not necessarily thin-skinned with the media or anything. He takes it hard as a professional, like he is letting the program down. And I don't know, man. It's like, are we going to start to see this kind of, devolve into kind of a black hole where he just can't get over it? I don't know. It's kind of tough to watch. They were even not, we know Kentucky's a rival. Tennessee fans don't love them. Their story was great last year. It really was.
Yeah.
But he almost did himself a disservice maybe by having that team perform so well last year, because I think maybe what's going on this year was going to be more the expectation of what would have happened with Kentucky basketball last year. But instead it's in reverse. And we just know how the fan base is there. It's not going to be pretty, I'm afraid.
No, you're right. I think two final notes on them kind of in that regard. It'll be fascinating to see how it plays out and if they continue to struggle, what the job security will look like. Um, we'll hope to get a second year, or I mean a third year, surely,
You would
but
think so, but
maybe not. Surely, you're paying $22 million for your roster if you can't make the NCAA tournament. Uh, it wouldn't be all that shocking. And then on the counterpoint, it's from a Tennessee perspective. It's just nightmare stuff waiting for them to come here. Tennessee's played so bad against Kentucky and Knoxville over the last handful of years and
yes.
lost a lot of games they should win. And as we noted earlier, Tennessee needs to take care of business at home in January. So that's one that feels like it's going to be torturous.
Yeah. 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 Let's and that's coming. It's coming soon, man. Real quick, as we put a bow on the SEC, I mentioned Mississippi State, Texas A&M, Missouri, all 2-0. Surely Mississippi State's not going to continue that pace. To me, it felt like they might be the worst team in the conference this year, or maybe short of South Carolina or LSU, but I don't buy that one. Texas A&M, I don't know. They lost Mackenzie Mabako, which is a big loss for them, but so far they're 2-0. Missouri is just I've given up trying to judge Missouri. It feels like they defy logic a lot in a good way for Dennis Gates. So I don't know. I watched some of that Kentucky game last night. What I can always count on with Missouri is that team's always together. You know what I mean? Just as far as chemistry and everything else. And I don't know. Missouri might be hanging around for all we know.
Yeah, you're talking about like a trust level in those three teams. Mississippi State, no doubt the lowest, and I think you can make an argument either way for A&M and Missouri. I kind of, and it's to your point about how just the variance in Missouri. Just because the highs are higher, now the lows have been lower too, but because the highs have been higher, I can see it with them a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think the thing for them that I look at is they obviously run a unique defense. I won't go as far as calling it a gimmick defense, but it always leaves teams a lot of open three-pointers, and opponents are shooting 36% against them from three. It ranks 287th nationally, and there's probably an element of bad luck there with shooting variance, but at the same time, it's a lot of open shots. It's not shocking. If you're going to do that, you better turn teams over, and they just haven't been great at that this year. Solid above the national average, but not at the rate you need to be. So it's hard to get a feel for them. I think they're a fun watch. I think they're one of the more enjoyable watches in the SEC, and you probably could say A&M is the same way too with that buckyball style of play. So those are two teams that feel like in similar spots. To me, I almost put Missouri, A&M, Auburn, and Kentucky. To me, they all feel like bubble teams right now. I'll be curious to see which of that group play their way into more favorable spots as we eventually move from January to February.
Yeah. Let's move on to the Big Ten, where obviously some high cotton there. You've got Michigan and Purdue undefeated in conference play at 4-0, up in the top 5 in the rankings. But then there's Nebraska. I mean, they're also undefeated and now ranked 10th nationally. We've talked about Michigan a lot. I will say I was a little struck the other night. They've been, I use the term loosely, but they've been kind of murdering teams for the most part. But then they got challenged to the last second against Penn State on Tuesday. I did not see that one coming.
No, that was shocking. I think three things: a level of credit to Penn State, who's clearly better than you traditionally think of with Penn State, and
Right.
better than they've been at times. 2, going on the road is challenging, and 3, it just feels like surely there was some level of Michigan just not being very locked in that game. And I watched some of the highlights afterwards, but didn't get to watch it live because it was overlapping with that Tennessee game. Did you happen to see the last possession? Because Penn State had the ball down by 2.
Yeah.
Freddie DeLeon, ball in his hand. It's not a very better than Kentucky's possession in the game against Missouri, but not a very good possession.
No, it felt like a pickup game point shot.
Very much.
It was like, whoa, okay, but yeah, Freddie's getting run there. I will say that.
And he's had a good year. He's been solid for him.
Yeah, most definitely. I think, we talked about Vanderbilt maybe showing their legitimacy a little more with the win over Alabama. I think Nebraska did that on Friday night with a road win. Or no, I don't think it was a road win. Was it in Lincoln? I think it was in Lincoln against
It was
Michigan
in
State.
Lincoln. Yeah, they won in Columbus on
That was
Monday
it.
night, I think.
Yeah. But you beat Michigan State anywhere, and particularly this version of Michigan State, you're doing something right. Nebraska, I don't know any of their guys other than Fred Hoiberg's sons out there on the floor, but Nebraska's legit, I think.
Yeah, I do too. Not to because I think Vanderbilt's the easy comp to them.
Yeah.
I don't think they're nearly as good as Vanderbilt, but yeah, I mean they look like a top 4 or 5 seed for sure in the NCAA tournament, and it's clearly not a fluke. Some good, close game variants. They beat Kansas State by 1. They won in Champaign on a game-winning shot that Michigan State was shooting 2 free throws with 0.5 seconds left, down by 2, a chance to tie it and force it to overtime. Ohio State had a look to tie the game at the buzzer the other night. So they've been really good in close games, and I don't, when you're comparing them to those other undefeated teams, I guess besides Miami of Ohio, I don't think they're at that level. But clearly a top 20, top 25 team, and a team that has a great chance. And it would, I guess this is the best way of putting it. It would be a disappointment at this point if Nebraska does not leave this year with their first ever NCAA tournament win.
Yeah. Last thing on Big Ten, I was going to say, USC gets ranked in the new year, and then wow, what a rough conference start for them. I mean, they go on the road and they play the 2 Michigan schools and lose by a total of 59 points. And I don't know, man. I try not to buy into maybe this travel aspect of it is a factor, but maybe it is. I don't know, but that surprised me, honestly. I'm not saying I think USC is a really, really good team, but to go and just get your head handed to you like that twice in a matter of days it's pretty tough.
Yeah, they've struggled a lot since Rodney Rice went down, and
Yep.
some of that's to be expected. But jarring numbers. Minnesota will be a telling one. I think they play them maybe tomorrow night. It might be,
Yeah.
maybe it's Saturday. But Minnesota, I think, is been a surprise in the Big Ten for what they've done, and that's another game on the road. Can you find a way to win a game against a team you're better than on the road in one of these long road trips? So, yeah, they've been disappointing. A name that I'd completely forgotten about, Bob. I wonder if you'll remember. He visited Tennessee back in the spring. Not one that ever got very serious. I think after the visit, Tennessee kind of backed off him. But a guy I completely forgot existed. Ryan Cornish, seeing an increase in minutes with
Yes.
Rodney Rice out.
God, I wouldn't. You had to remind me.
Yeah.
That's a good pull.
Yeah, he was one that he popped up for about 2 days on Tennessee's radar. I think Dartmouth, I think, is where he was at.
Yep, that's right.
And he's probably playing more than than USC would like for him to have to with the Rice injury.
Quickly, the Big 12. I mean, those 4 teams in the top 10. Man, I mean, Arizona, Iowa State looked the part of a potential national champ. You have brought this up regularly the last couple of weeks. Here comes Houston. They haven't lost since they lost to the Vols. BYU looks good. So chalk is ruling the day in that conference. My big question in the Big 12 is, and I know UCF took out Kansas, and that was a nice win for UCF. Can Kansas be a factor? It feels like this game they're going to have to play with Darren Peterson. I mean, he's obviously, when he's on the floor, he is outstanding. Kind of took parts of that TCU game into his own hands, but I don't know what's going on with him and his status because of he seems to have that nagging injury.
Yeah, and I think just from having done some reading on it, like he's been cleared for a while by the Kansas doctors, even when he wasn't playing, and it wasn't like he played 20 minutes, but he played 32 minutes in a game that went into overtime, and he was the best player on the court the other night. So again, it feels like that had a little something to do with it. I will say, kind of on the Missouri front, and I think these are they're separated by like 3 spots on Ken Palm. I think TCU's up there with one of the teams I can't get a grip on as much as anybody in the country. Again, the highs are high, beating Florida. They're up by 16 in the second half in this game at Allen Fieldhouse. But they blow it. They lost to New Orleans to open the year. They lost to a Notre Dame team that loss to me continues to age pretty poorly. In a game that they needed to get last night. And look, the Big 12's so good that you're going to have so many difficult games. But Arizona and BYU, that's the next 2 for TCU. So it would have been a huge, huge win for them last night to kind of get their or 2 nights ago to kind of find their footing.
Yeah, I think they're hosting Arizona and Fort Worth this weekend. So we'll maybe learn a little more about TCU at this point, because that game against Kansas was crazy. Talking about a guy who it's tough to gauge their team ceiling because of his status. It's jumping over to the ACC, and that's Louisville. They had Duke on the ropes the other night, but Duke showed what they're made of in the second half. They turn a 9-point deficit into, I believe, an 11-point win. So the beat goes on for Duke, but back to Louisville. If Mikel Brown continues to miss games, we saw it when they came to Knoxville. They're still a good team, but they're very different without him.
They are, and just an element that he has, I think, of getting into paint and finishing that Conwell has, but McNeely certainly doesn't have. I don't think Woolley quite has, at least not at the same clip. He's very much a straight line driver. So it'll be interesting to see. And again, that's another injury that feels like, it's just been listed as day to day, and it continues to kind of to drag on. They've still been good offensively without him. I don't think it's just like a fix all. But to your point, a puzzling team, because they kind of lack the marquee win. You thought maybe Kentucky would be that early. That is certainly not proven to be the case. Some good wins. Indiana was a good win. Semi-away game against Cincinnati is like a solid win. That's a bubble quality team. But to lose at Stanford, again, a West Coast road trip, it's not easy. And to not get that Duke game at home, which, that's just going to be any home game against Duke for this, as we talked about last week, it's kind of a second tier. It's Duke and everybody else in the ACC. A good second tier. You get Duke at home. Those are opportunities you need to really take advantage of.
Yeah, that second tier is interesting because SMU took out North Carolina pretty handily over the weekend, but then they lose to Clemson last night. I think we're really, we'll see what happens when SMU goes to Duke on Saturday. I think that's going to be interesting. But you're right. It's Duke and everyone else, but now you got Clemson at 3-0. Miami, all of a sudden, Miami's 3-0 in conference. They're 13-2 under Jai Lucas. ACC is much better than last year, but still, I feel like it's kind of, like I said, Duke and everyone else.
Yeah, I agree. Like North Carolina, I think will be a top 5 seed.
Sure.
To me, it feels like a lot of 6, 7, 8 seed type teams with Virginia, with Louisville, with SMU, with Clemson. I still don't really buy Miami all that much. I don't know. Maybe I just need to watch them more. But to me, they not a bubble team, but lower seeded team. I still kind of feel like so. It'll be interesting. SMU is the intriguing one. I like their roster build. I like watching BJ Edwards. Obviously, Boobie Miller has been about as good of anyone in that conference besides Cam Boozer so far. So they're a team that I like a lot, and certainly don't think of them in the ACC. They'd be fun in the Big 12 with all those teams in Texas that are so good this year. But again, it's kind of like we said last week. It feels like it's a lot of status quo in the ACC right now.
Yeah. To wrap up our conference rundown in the Big East, UConn, we were texting last night on this one. They avert a big upset at the hands of Providence on the road. So UConn still holds their ground as the top team in the Big East. Villanova, Seton Hall, St. John's, they're all lurking around there. Like we've said, the Big East feels a little down, but one of those teams might be able to, somebody's going to have to get wins in that conference. I think you said that last week. And so those are as good a bet as any. But our friend Kim English, that was a tough one to lose last night. They were up 11 against UConn with 3 minutes to go. UConn battles back, forces overtime. It just felt like Providence kind of melted down, and that's a tough one. I'm not sure, with Kim English, can he string enough wins together to kind of keep the natives keep them from getting too restless.
Yeah, it's like that would have just been such a good back-to-back. They win at St. John's on Saturday. And it's just hard to get past how they lost because they really did blow that game late. But I will say they're 1-3 in Big East play. They lost that Butler game on the road, was in double overtime, one of the games of the year. They lost really, really close to Seton Hall. Like it feels like they're due for some good luck. And not, I can't remember who the assistant coach is, but I read a little bit about Kim brought someone in to run the offense over the offseason. Radically different look, almost a little bit Georgia-esque with Mike White, but they ranked 32nd in offensive efficiency, 137th in defense. Kim doesn't have another offense that's ranked higher than 87th in his 5 years as a head coach, young career. But that's, at the very least, a more entertaining style of play. Maybe that gets him a little bit of slack. And then the other thing I'll say in the Big East, just the pure McDermott respect that someone has to win games and he's a good coach. They sit there. They sit there at 4-1, and after looking pretty terrible for a lot of non-conference play, it feels like they're at the very least going to play themselves into the bubble and maybe give themselves a chance to make the tournament when that did not look very likely earlier in the season.
Yeah, and uncharacteristically at the bottom of the conference, it's not DePaul, it's Marquette right now, 1-4 in conference. So things a little tough.
They won their Marquette. I think it beat. Can't remember who it was. They beat maybe Xavier. I think maybe Xavier last night. First win over a Power 5 team for them this year. And Bob, it was going on the same time as Tennessee game. Did you happen to see some of the numbers from Georgetown's loss against DePaul on Tuesday night?
No, I saw I saw the end of it, and I saw I saw the final score, but no, not some of the stuff in the weeds.
Georgetown made one field goal in the second half.
Wow.
You heard that right. They made one shot in the second half. They scored 15 points in the second half. I think it was the last 8, maybe 9 minutes of the game. They didn't make a field goal. Pretty crazy. You see some bad offensive stats from time to time in college basketball. One's, and certainly at Tennessee, we're not immune to seeing some of those. But one made shot in the second half. I don't think I'd hardly ever seen that before.
That's crazy. That is crazy. Well, we'll head into another big weekend. We've already talked about some of these games. SMU at Duke, Arizona, TCU, big one in the Big Ten, number 16, Illinois at number 19, Iowa, and of course, Tennessee, Florida. So there'll be games to watch. As for this week, we're going to wrap it up now, but we will be back next week with no doubt a bunch of games to talk about, including recapping the Vols game at Florida and then the upcoming week ahead. We've talked about this, but home games against Texas A&M and Kentucky coming to Knoxville next week. So we will definitely have some things to talk about. There'll be all sorts of other big time matchups in the SEC across the country, etc. As a reminder, we really appreciate you watching, but make sure you hit the like and subscribe button for this show if you're watching on YouTube, or download our podcast wherever you find your podcasts. So many thanks to all of you out there who make the time to check this show out. And Ryan, as always, thank you. Look forward to doing this with you again next week.
Yep, enjoy it as always.
Yep, definitely so. We'll be right back here. Thank you very much for everybody checking us out. Like I said, giving us some of your time. You all have a great basketball weekend, and we'll see you next week with a brand new episode of the RTI Rim Runner.